Abraham Lincoln is often thought of as one of the United States' most moral and just presidents. But what if I told you that he was arguably the closest America ever came to having a dictator? After the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, the commander-in-chief found himself in a sketchy situation. For one, a war had just broken out, and two, Washington, D.C. was unprotected from the war, and Lincoln needed to get troops there quickly. Because a war had just broken out, there were now riots in Maryland, and these riots were going to prevent troops from reaching the capital when Lincoln needed them to. President Lincoln had no time to spare, and he took matters into his own hands. In an effort to quickly get Union troops to the capital, Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus without congressional approval. The writ of habeas corpus is a court order that protects citizens' rights by requiring public officials to have substantial reason and evidence for one's arrest. Basically, habeas corpus makes it so you can't be arrested for no reason. The original suspension of habeas corpus allowed for many individuals to be arrested without judicial review or probable cause. The first batch included several Baltimore police commissioners and many rioting citizens, meaning troops could now get to the Capitol on time. Lincoln's decision brought tons of controversy in the nation and government. The Constitution states that the privilege of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion of the public safety may require it. But that clause is dealing with congressional powers, which led many to argue that only Congress had the power to suspend it, and Lincoln did it on his own without congressional approval, therefore violating the Constitution. Congress convened for a special session on July 4, 1861, and Lincoln defended his actions by saying that the suspension of habeas corpus was necessary and constitutional given that the U.S. was now in a civil war. Lincoln also said that as commander-in-chief, he had the power to take such an action that supposedly preserved the Union. In 1862, Lincoln started to ease up. He released many political prisoners that had only been in prison because of the suspension of habeas corpus, and even offered them amnesty. But a few months later, Lincoln expanded the suspension of habeas corpus to spread the entire country. Now, anybody, anywhere in the U.S. could be arrested for no good reason. A few months after this, Lincoln got some congressional backing. Congress passed the Habeas Corpus Suspension Act, which stated the president could suspend habeas corpus if he thought it was necessary. The writ of habeas corpus stayed suspended until after the Civil War, its primary purpose being to jail rebellious Union citizens, whether they were causing trouble on the home front or if they were offering assistance to the Confederacy. Some would argue that Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus was necessary in order to deal with the threat of the Civil War, and some think it was completely unconstitutional. Whatever your opinion is, President Lincoln's decision to suspend the writ of habeas corpus during the Civil War is a great example of how civil liberties can decrease during war, and it is also one of the many examples of presidential power increasing throughout American history. Lincoln quite literally went against the Constitution and Congress, arguably making him the closest the United States has ever come to a dictator. Just think, during the Civil War, you could have been arrested for no reason.